Okay, let's use a new document to demonstrate some of the selection tools. So I'm doing 11 by 17 CMYK color. I'll go ahead and grab my scale artwork here, ready to make it larger. This is coming in again as a smart object, so I can just pop it up in the corner and holding down the shift key, scale it. Use my crop tool to eliminate the excess. Now I know I've got a 17-inch wide background there. I can probably leave my paper color here. I don't know that we'll get to it. And I'll call this my line art layer, renaming that. And again, setting that one to multiply. Okay, so we'll go through all of the selection tools that you need to get this color one started. So at its most simple, the marquee tool allows you to select an area that is either square or circular. So rectangular or an oval counts too. So as you can see, as I fill here, there's a square, which is going to do us no good for this guy. We've got various ellipses as well. So if you got lucky and some piece of that art happened to be a perfect circle or a perfect square, then that's going to work good for you. More than likely, you're going to end up using one of these guys, the lasso tool, or polygonal lasso, which is the next one down. And it's not selecting. All right, apparently it really wants me to draw something. Fuck off. The lasso. You've got the regular freehand lasso, the polygonal lasso, which is good for straight edges, and something called the magnetic lasso. Now I'm going to be occasionally deselecting something. So whenever I make a shape and hit some keystroke that you're not seeing, that's Command D. D to deselect in this case. So let's try and, I'm going to try and use the regular freehand lasso to do a selection that will include this shoulder pad on our character here. And you can see that depending on my skill, it's not particularly good. You can get in here and see what I've got and what I'm missing. If I want to add to that selection, I can hold down the shift key and add a little bit. You can see I'm drawing additional shapes there to incorporate what I might have missed. Not the easiest thing to do. If I've made too much, I want to take away from it, I can hold down the Option or Alt key to do the same thing. I'm taking away from that shape. I'm going to take away from some up here. And the advantage of having your top layer as a multiply layer is that you can be inside the blacks anywhere and they're not going to see a mistake. Sort of coloring in the lines, but the lines are actually on top of your drawing instead of behind your drawing. So it should look a little bit better. So now I've got something that's kind of that shoulder pad. And in the lore of this character, that's a gold color. I'm going to go with a kind of a dull gold here because I'm going to do some highlight type stuff to it. And lo and behold, I used a lasso setting that I made that's not the one that I want. It has a little bit of a feather on it. That's something you can set up in advance if you know you're going to be doing a lot of soft selections. So I was sitting on my 15 pixel one. I would instead want to do it with my 0 pixel one. One of the great hazards of making a mistake in Photoshop is oftentimes you're kind of back doing it again. So just did a little rough there. If I'm of the mind to clean something up after the fact, I can use my erase tool to get rid of excess. That's another way to deal with overshooting. And I can also use the brush tool, B for brush. And I've got it set very large right now. Let me show you a shortcut for that. To change the size of it, I'm holding down Control and Alt or Option, which is changing the size of it. And I'm dragging to the left and right with my mouse to make it smaller, larger. Likewise, if I go up and down, I'm getting a soft brush versus a hard brush. So I'm going to go hard and I'm going to go smaller. And eventually I'm going to get really good at doing that The fact that it turns red, don't worry, that's just its way of showing a bright image on top of your existing one so that it knows what you're up to. And you know that you're making a change, you're making a successful change. So there is the standard lasso, the freehand lasso. If you want to scroll through a tool that has multiple versions, hold down the shift key and then hit the shortcut for that tool. So if L is lasso, which it is, I can go shift L and I'll be able to scroll through to polygonal, magnetic, freehand, and so on. So let's see what the polygonal does for us on this one. Not so great because it's got some curves in here, but I'll go ahead and try my best. Yeah, it's not working too good for this. Let's do a little section so we can see. Double click to close it. And again, I'm filling. For filling, there's a couple ways to go. A lot of people like to use the G, and I've got a shift G here to bring up the bucket tool, the paint bucket, which is fine if that hitting G is faster than what I do, which is if your swatch is on the top and you want to fill, it's Option and Delete on the Mac. If your swatch is on the bottom, like I've got white here, I could switch that around and let's put red on the top, yellow on the bottom. Anytime you want to switch those, you can hit X for exchange. So now if I want to fill that with the background color, Command Delete for the bottom, Option Delete for the top. And I think it would be Option for the bottom, Control for the top one on Windows. Okay, so I don't have a great selection there. Polygonal Lasso not really working so hot for that one. This is where maybe bring in the marquee tool to very quickly select an area and just delete it. All right, magnetic lasso. Some people are good at this. I'm not. The theory is that as you get close to an edge, it knows what you're up to and tries to stick it to there. So it's doing an okay job. I'm trying, I'm doing as good as I can with the mouse here. And I'm not doing so good. But when you get to the end, you have to close it. And you can see why I don't like this tool. Probably you might be able to get it to work better. There's a way to control it by changing some of the settings on the thing there. But I'm just not a fan. Maybe you can get it to work. So of the lassos, I like the polygonal for doing square edge stuff, and I'm a little faster with that. Freehand, unless you're working with a tablet, can be kind of a nightmare. Okay, so those are the big 2 or 3 there for selecting. But one that I am a big advocate of is using the pen tool, and that's P for pen, to create a path that you can save as a selection. So let's say we want to do our pretty complicated shoulder pad. This is a heck of an 80s shoulder pad here. But what's good about the Bezier is it can handle straights and it can handle curves with equal aplomb. You just need to know the trick. So straightaways are pretty easy. I'll start with that. Click down here, click there, and you're creating a path. And I don't really need to do it like that because I've got the black working in my favor, but this is working pretty good. Now I come to kind of a curve. If I want to curve, a little click and drag, as you see, creates a pretty decent little curve there. Let's put more of a curve there. You can see that. Zoom out to see if that should be his arm there, but it looks like the artist might have missed that inking. No, that's the guy's fingers coming through. All right. Now here we're getting into a much bigger curve. So as you can see, as I click and drag, I'm changing the orientation of that curve. It's something you'll get to learn by habit, by doing it a lot. But now I've come to a point where if I want to come back to here, it's going to do this sort of sweeping curve, and I don't want that. Go back a step. That has something to do with this handle right here. It's the same handle. If I hold down my Alt key, I can change it. That enable me to get this in the first place. But a couple ways we can get rid of it. We can hover right over our little knot here and hold down the Option key and click it, which makes it go away. And now I can come out of that and go into a much sharper curve. Likewise, if you're done with it and after the fact you see you've made a mistake, that same shortcut option and picking up that handle lets you manipulate it after the fact too. And I can just pick up where I left off here and keep going. Now I think it's really good for stuff like this where click and drag, click, click, maybe a little around there, a little around there, a little around there, into here. It's a click, it's a click, it's a click. Here comes a curve. I'll just do this whole thing as one big curve. Watch. Click and curve. Now I gotta do a quick angle change. So I'll hold down that Alt and click it to make it go back into itself. Oh, there's one where I need a little bit more of a tweak like that. And I guess the hope here is that you don't need to put in a lot of points because it's capable of doing these subtle, technically mechanical curves like this. All right. Now I come back to my original point if I can remember where that was, and I close it, at which point over on my paths palette here I have a path that I can name. So I could call this Eagle Shoulder Pad. And now that's in there, and anytime I want to return to that selection, I can do so. But it's not a selection yet, it's just a path. It's vector information that tells me where something is. If I want to load it as a selection, I'm going to hold down the Command key, Control on the Windows side, and as I hover over that thumbnail for that path, I can just click on the thumbnail itself, which loads that. You can see the marching ants going. If I fill that, and I've got that looking pretty good. Now, this is his shoulder pads. Technically, his elbow pads are the same color. So maybe I just come in quick, new path here, P for the pen tool, and just come in. I'm going to knock this out super quick so we can see these together, because I'm going to do one or two other things before we wrap this one up. A little too curvy. I'm kind of crazy when it comes to the path tool. It's elbow. Because I do all sorts of things with it that it's not meant to do, like cutting out hair and things like that. Okay, get in here. I see I've made some come up short a little bit. So another shortcut for changing the brush size is the bracket keys. As left bracket makes it smaller, right bracket makes it bigger. Likewise, if it's shift in brackets, that makes it softer and harder. So right now I've been doing nothing but hard edge here. Let's take this time to do, we'll put in one other color so you can see. Probably you'll start with sort of flat color like this. So let's go with his suit. His suit is blue in the comic. Pretty superhero blue. I'm gonna go with something like that, I guess. And I tell you what, since he's got so much black here, I can probably just paint this sucker. And I'm gonna do hard brush and just block it in real thick like. Because I'm underneath the elbow pads, I'm not hitting anything I don't want to hit. Yeah, I overshot a couple times, but little erase tool, come in there. A little easier if I'm closer. By the way, the zooming in that I'm doing, a couple ways you can go about that. I use plus, command plus and minus on the keypad. But you might use the zoom tool. Z brings up the zoom. And zoom's kind of hard. I'm not a big fan of it, but you can mouse in and mouse out to get there. You can also marquee over a specific area, I think, too. Okay, so we got some color going on there, but it's rather flat, rather flat. His helmet. Let's try something else for the helmet. We got two kinds of selection tools that are under W here, wand and quick selection tool, which is sort of an updating of the classic wand. I'll show you the classic wand first. It will select an area of like color. So if we look at something like this black helmet here, I could conceivably click on it and have it work. I need to be, however, on the layer that has that artwork. So because this was connected, this black was connected to this black, all of that black got selected. So Command D there. See what happens when I try and hit the white area. So yeah, that's pretty good. Let me just real quick see if I'm selecting my proper layer for helmet there. Let's see what a little fill of red does. Pretty good. You can see that because it's a procedural selection, it's not really up to the edge of the line art. It's actually missing it a little bit. I changed the order there a bit, but okay, well, I'm going to pop that over, just fill in some gaps, and we'll come back and maybe make that more interesting. I forget whether his helmet is red and the lines are gold or what, but let's talk about some variation of color. Now that we've got these areas selected, we can start to get in some subtlety. So I'm going to try and add some shadow for those our elbow pads and things. For starters, I want to make sure I'm on the same basic color. If I hit I, it brings up the eyedropper. If I'm on my brush tool and I want to select a color quick, like let's say I want to get that red, if I hold down the Alt or Option key, it turns temporarily, the brush turns into an eyedropper. So that can be nice for very quickly grabbing some color. Now if I wanted to paint some, say, highlights and shadows on this gold, I can open up my color picker by selecting that top swatch and go with maybe a slightly brighter color. And I want to paint only where my shoulder pads are colored right now. So here's how we're going to do that. Down on the right, in the Layers palette, a Command click on the thumbnail, Control click on the Windows side, will load wherever my paint is on the shoulder pads layer. So now let me make sure I got a nice soft brush and come in and pop in some highlights here. So maybe even each one of those has their own little highlight. Here's a little thing we can do. I got kind of a straightaway here. If I do a click and a shift click, it's going to go in a straight line. Click, shift click, click, shift click, and that's getting a nice little highlight on there. It's way better than it was before. We can do the same thing for all manners of stuff here. Depending on what brush I'm using, this can be really soft or really hard, and it can be more accurate or less accurate than I am doing right now. If I take my time, using a tablet will enable some of this to be a little bit easier. Here I'm sampling that color again. Come back and put that shadow in. Let's do a darker layer too. That's too dark probably. Wonder if let's see what happens if we come in with that. Pretty shadowy there. Yeah, hard to do that curve so easily. Another thing you could do, since these might be metallic, would be to add a super bright highlight on it. There's a lot of tricks out there, but I'll show you one that I like, maybe on its own layer. Call this highlights. We can set this layer to a different mode, something like add. And if we select that highlight color and start painting on here, you may see that. Now it's going everywhere. I got to be careful. But you can see that acting as kind of a pinpoint. The more times we hit it, the brighter it goes. It could be kind of fun. So I'm not sure if he's getting hit with some sun over there or what. Maybe the top of the. That's it's actually changing the color of that too. I wonder if we go with something a little more neutral. If that works. Yeah, it goes to full white. Yeah, anytime you're adding, it's going to be powerful. So it overshot a couple times on there, but you can see where that might be headed. And in that case, I would just come back in and hit that with an eraser. Maybe a soft eraser. We might want that to come across the edge of that a little better. Again, I could just load that selection so it's not getting away from me like it did there. We do one more quick highlight over on that other side. B for brush, Alt selecting. I'm going to select the highlight color, not the added color that I just ended up with. Yeah, So that's pretty cool. Okay. So there's a few tricks towards getting, working with some layers, keeping things separated, reloading selections, which can be useful for changing things up. And let's throw in one more candidate, which would be gradients of color. We've got kind of a big potential for some background color here because of this sort of shiny explosion thing going on. Now, planning ahead, he's kind of a green blue, so maybe I'm going to do something that's easy to see. Let's overdo it here. Tell you what, I'm going to do a variation on that. So we'll do a gradient that goes from sort of a pink to a magenta. That's going to be really obnoxious, but on this back layer. So I talked about the G for paint bucket, but the G for gradient allows us to fill with transitions of color. It can go from foreground color to transparent, which is the one I've got selected currently. That's really nice if you want to do something like a quick little, let's put this on the highlight layer just for fun, a little ping on the, you can't really see it too much. Let me tell you what, put on its own thing here, switch it to the darker color, you can see what I got here. So this little pings of color like that, that's going from foreground to transparent. And that might be nice just to, kind of generally change the look of something in the background there. We've got a linear gradient, which goes from in a single direction, evenly, I guess. A radial gradient, which lets you go in a circle, out from a specific spot. That's pretty nice. And then they get into some pretty weird ones. Here's one that's a little hard to read there. Let me put it on its own layer and make sure it's set to full opacity so you can see it. Sort of a double gradient going from thin to thick to thin. And that's good for doing like a highlight on a pillar or something like that. I'm going to just do a real quick radial and from background to foreground, and just to see what that looks like. You can see where my, yeah, there it is. I'll make that just a little bit brighter. Okay, yeah, so you can see where the core of the image is a little brighter and the edge of the image went a little bit darker. I need to go back in and erase some of my highlights right here that I overshot on the, because it was on white, we couldn't see it. Now we can because it's on pink. That is a very interesting arrangement, maybe not correct, but it's a pretty good start. I suppose if you wanted, you could make sure that you're, oh, here's a place where the marquee tool actually works. How about that? I wonder if I could do my elliptical equally successfully. Not quite. Pretty good start though. All right. Just brush in the rest of it. Making sure that my brush is on top. Oop, I got a soft brush going. Let's make sure that that's nice and hard. There we go. And just doing it by hand here with the mouse. So it's starting to look like a comic panel. Maybe not the right flavor for this series, but somewhat on model. And so highlights, shadows, gradients, variety of color, and there's a few ways for you to select stuff too.